In a way, this is about purpose. This is why do you do things. So our tagline is technology for financial lifetime. So it's about people's lives we have impact on. So in a way, why I go to my work is because I feel it's important that people can buy that house, that entrepreneurs can have a loan to grow their business, that people are enabled to save for their pension. Of course, I need to sell my software to keep my company sound, but the real purpose is helping the people achieving those goals.
I think we are very proud of our mortgage solution. If you are a mortgage customer, you have to be with your home loan for 20-30 years, right? And imagine the whole country, right? How big is this transaction and how complex the solution could be. 60% of mortgage transaction in the Netherlands is processed by our software.
Wow, that's a big number.
Yeah, so long-term, very stable and very scalable, national scale.
Hello and welcome to episode 37 of the Exponential Show. Today, it is a pleasure of mine to introduce Eric Euwes, and the Chief Commercial Officer, and Jirat Boomuang, the Head of Solution Engineering Asia at Akkuro. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The pleasure is all mine, and it's day 3 of Money 2020. I'm sure it's been a busy week for the two of you and your team behind the scenes who are, I'm sure, juggling 1,000 responsibilities at this time. But I'm glad you could make the time to speak with us. The first question that we ask all our guests is, what is your superhero origin story? So what got you into the world of finance and fintech? So if you could just maybe share some key career milestones for the both of you so that our audience could understand your world better.
Okay. I'm Eric. I'm Chief Commercial Officer of Akkuro by Topicus. I'll tell a bit more about that later. And I was one of the lucky ones because I've been in the industry for 40 years now. Way back then, computer was different. Right. So, but I studied business informatics, and then I went to work for an insurance company, and somehow IT, financial industry, and being a commercial guy, that was the red line through my whole career.
Wow. Okay.
Most of my career I spent in the Netherlands, where I'm originally from. But when I joined Topicus, they had a strong ambition to grow in Southeast Asia, and I was the lucky one that could do that journey. So in short, sales, technology, and financial services is my core.
Interesting, and it's I think the advantage of having worked across these three over such a long period, I think it gives you an interesting perspective of how things have evolved over time, and I look forward to learning more in our conversation.
Happy to share.
Now, Jirat, if you could also share about your journey in finance and fintech, and what were the key milestones that
Sure,
brought you here?
Again, Jirat Boomuang, Head of Solution Engineering for Akkuro in Asia, right? So I started my career as a hardcore programmer. I had a degree in computer science. Right. Then I moved to management and finance, and then I came back to school and did a PhD in generative AI, right? And now finance, AI combined together, then you have a modernized, composable banking solution powered by AI, right? So this is the inspiration that landed me in Akkuro.
Interesting. So that's like I said, so just essentially two worlds combining, sort of converging in your journey. So
yes,
it's fascinating to know, and I'd love to learn about your perspective on so the conversations we're having today as well. So first things first, you mentioned the words composable banking. So for a layperson, if you could maybe explain what composable banking architecture is, and how it's replacing or augmenting what the core systems of banks are currently functioning on.
If you don't mind, maybe let's hear from the business perspective first.
Okay. Okay. So, as I said, I've been in the industry for 40 years, and most of the time you see a huge core banking implementation within a bank.
Right.
It takes you a few years to get it running, Then, of course, for a few years, you're quite happy that you have that new engine.
Right.
But then it will take you a few years again to replace it. So we thought that's a lot of lock-in for a bank, and it's hard to stay, let's say, resilient or agile in a ever faster moving world to adapt.
Absolutely.
So that's why we came up with the Composable banking platform. So the first advantage is you can just hollow out the core step by step instead of one just big rip and replace headache.
I see.
The second thing is you can just have a best of breed composable architecture. So you can just have a look at, hey, for lending, this is my best partner. For investments, I can choose that partner. And after a few years, if a partnership doesn't fit anymore, it's way easier to find a new solution for that specific area
I see.
and to move ahead. And I think especially when technology is evolving really fast, like AI, everyone's talking AI,
Right.
but it's not always easy to have that big monolithic engine in your basement
I'm sure.
and then infuse AI technology with it. So we think to keep you agile, ready for the future, it's better to have your whole architecture in components. So it can be a CRM component, it can be a lending component, it can be a core banking and current accounts component.
Right.
Of course, you need to bring it all together with an orchestration layer, but modern technology can do that. So you bring all the data points of the systems of records to one place where you have the single point of truth and the 360 view of your customer. So then you always know all the products of your customer, all his needs, and you can provide him with advice what he might miss.
Right.
So in a way, it's our approach to stay agile and ahead of competition.
Awesome. That's fascinating to hear about. In fact, just yesterday I was having a chat with one of the guests here at Money 2020. He works in the fintech space, in insurance tech specifically, and we were talking about how slow-moving banks typically are. So he's doing sort of a CRM software for insurance companies, and it's always a pain for him because banks, the software at banks in a lot of times is ancient, if I can use that word. So the fact that you are able to bring agility, and I'm not sure if modularity is the right word to use, but
Yes, that is
Composable, modular, same area.
So yeah, so I think that even as an outsider looking in, I see why that would add a lot of value to not just banks, but the stakeholders that work around banks as well. So that's great to know. And is there anything from the technology standpoint that sort of enables all of this that you would like to shed
Yeah, of
light
course.
on?
So maybe there is a framework called BIAN,
Okay.
Banking Infrastructure Architecture Network,
Okay.
right? Many banks come together and think, okay, if we are to have a good architecture for banking solution, this is how it should look like.
Right.
And then when you design your platform that way, you get composable banking, right? That follow the standard. So you could be a bank in Europe or a bank in the US, and let's say, okay, now I want to do digital bank. If you already have a BIN framework, you can just plug our module in and go live in like 100 days.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is where to bring in. We're not just inventing new thing out of the blue, right? We follow best practice and we bring our own 25 years of experience into the picture.
Right.
I think Jirat said a very important thing because he just said within 100 days live.
Right. I saw you mentioned several years to 100 days.
So that's the big difference. If your bank is running okay, but you decide that SME lending is a new area you want to excel in, then it's really hard to add that to your to implement it in your core.
Right.
But it will take you
Yes.
maybe a year.
Wow.
And we say no, we just add that SME lending, for instance, proposition. Within 100 days you're live, you're good to go to the market. You can test if your product is okay, if people want it. And even if it's not successful, of course we don't hope that, but that's way easier to get out of that market again. So
Makes sense.
very fast time to market,
Right.
low investments, test the market. If you're good, you can expand. That's our philosophy.
That's fascinating. Banks are sort of notorious for moving slow, so I think anything that can help make that kind of a jump from several years to 100 days is a game changer for a lot of banks, and sort of almost prepares them for what's ahead.
Yeah, and I think competition, it's not just banks that compete with each other, but there's a lot of, let's say, non-banking financial service providers that move way faster than traditional banks.
True.
So if they want to stay in that game, they need to increase their speed in changing their operation.
I'm sure.
I guess they need to digitalize everything, because then you can have a very fast go-to-market with your client,
Right.
and make him happy, because in a way, a client is not looking for a mortgage, he's looking for a house. So you should help him to buy that house he loves,
Right.
and then mortgage is just an instrument.
Makes sense. Yeah, that's a great perspective, especially from thinking about the end consumer as well, because the entire system ultimately functions for them.
Yeah.
So that's great to know. And you mentioned the use of AI, obviously, and you've had a long experience in the world of AI. So how do you see within your area of composable banking, but even otherwise, the key roles that AI is now playing in sort of modernizing traditional finance, but perhaps also opening up new doors to things that we weren't familiar with further? If you could maybe shed a light on your opinion on the role AI is playing in the entire ecosystem.
We can add some insights from our side. AI, of course, it's still a young technology. So I would say my answer today will differ from my answer tomorrow or in a few months. It's moving at immense speed.
I'm sure.
At this moment, I see AI, everyone does the talk, some do the walk, to be honest. To implement AI in a bank is highly regulated market. That's something you really need to be aware of. I think most implementations of AI at this moment are call center, anti-fraud, pattern analysis, not in the real core. I don't see any AI engine deciding, let's disburse this loan. Yeah, let's give him the money.
Right.
There's always a human in the loop there, for sure. But this evolves quite fast. So Gen AI, banks are experimenting with it. Agentic AI is coming fast. Then you actually have an agent, let's say a digital colleague, acting on its own. And deciding on, hey, if I need to do this, and then I will need that other agent to do something, and then so all of a sudden you have a lot of colleagues, and we have some let's say a proof of concept for clients done with agentic as well.
Interesting.
But that's still early stage. I don't see that happening in a payment or a mortgage disbursement yet.
I see. And from a technical standpoint, do you think there's any sort of roadblocks you're seeing on the implementation side of things? So obviously the promise of the technology is there, but like Eric mentioned, it's still fairly new, and the adoption, I'm sure, especially in finance, people would like to be careful. So do you see any technical implementation hurdles that you have to cross with your...
Sure. So there are two contexts here. Using AI internally to speed up implementation process. So you could get maybe your digital wealth module in 100 days.
Right.
That one context. Another context is consumer who use our AI technology, right? So when you talk about AI, most people think about LLM or AI agent at the moment. Right. So the biggest roadblock is that this AI is still non-deterministic, which means you ask the same question twice. The AI will give you maybe similar answer, but different answer, right? When you have the same input, but you could have different output, and maybe you cannot predict what that output going to be. This is non-deterministic. Right. But for bank, you must be 100% reliable. Right. You cannot say, oh yeah, this is going to be your good customer with 99.9%. But when you ask them question again, oops, sorry, I gave you wrong answer. Actually, this is a very risky customer. Right. You should never give loan to them, right? So this is still the biggest one. But this is why it is good for human. So human is still relevant. We still need human in the loop. So now the challenge is that our customer and the users need to understand limitation of AI, right? And then they need to know their own roles in this game. So how to become the master of AI and let AI be your assistant and use AI as a tool, as co-pilot. I think this is the real challenge,
I see.
understanding of AI.
Got it.
In addition, that will improve fast. So at this moment, explainability, auditability, which is the standard in banking,
Right.
is still hard.
Got it.
But I think this technology is evolving really fast. So I think in a couple of months, in 6 months, we will say, okay, that was the problem we solved.
Right.
We are in the next phase now. So you need to try things like every month to see what can it bring to you, or have a partner that helps you in deciding, because there's a lot of technology going on, and well, if you're a bank, you focus on banking and maybe not on technology.
Explain what AI is important. So good AI, right, should tell you how did it come or derive this output.
Right.
What was the thinking process, and what are the sources of information
Right.
that could help AI propose this solution
Got
or this number
Right.
to you, right? It is important, which means you still need human to
Right.
analyze reasoning and check sources if it is credible before you can trust the output from AI. And we do have explainable AI.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so that's.
And I think if we kind of solve this, then you will be able to provide financial services, which is now maybe exclusively for high net worth individuals, because there's a human, a banker, it's an expensive channel. And then you can provide that to everyone. So more and more people will have access to financial instruments they were not privileged to, because they were not paying enough. And I really think that the real power of AI in that sense is it will help a lot of people get access to financial instruments and therefore improve their financial well-being.
I can imagine. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, in fact, that is a good segue into our next question, which is just so you already mentioned like just overall benefit for just inclusion, well-being. You also mentioned that a lot of customers, in fact, most customers, when they're looking at financial instruments, they're not looking at the instruments themselves, but what benefits or advantages or needs those instruments are solving for them. You used the example of mortgage earlier. So can you maybe dive a little bit deeper on the key benefits that your platform, your technology is bringing for the consumer end of the banking ecosystem?
Yeah, so in a way, this is about purpose. This is why do you do things. So our tagline is technology for financial lifetime. So it's about people's lives we have impact on. That's why I liked the tagline of Money 2020, where technology meets humanity. That's the same bridge in a way. So in a way, why I go to my work is because I feel it's important that people can buy that house, that entrepreneurs can have a loan to grow their business, that people are enabled to save for their pension. Of course, I need to sell my software to keep my company sound, but the real purpose is helping the people achieving those goals. Maybe I can zoom out a bit. Our company, Topicus, is in healthcare, education, local government, and financial services.
I see. Okay.
So in all those areas, it's about the impact we make on people's life. And we measure that, that's our social impact factor. For us, that's a very important, let's say, KPI to see if we're doing the right things. And I'm convinced that a lot of my colleagues work with our company because that's our mission, not just selling software. That's a means.
Sure. I mean, as a consumer, it's very reassuring to hear because especially as somebody who sort of looks at finance from the outside in, I think more of a consumer of financial instruments as opposed to be on the finance end of the spectrum. I think just it puts me at ease to know that technology infrastructure companies are sort of heavily prioritizing the needs of the customers and what the customer would benefit from. So it's, thank you for that message. Now, at the other end of the spectrum lie the banks themselves. So if you could maybe, we talked about obviously just basic future-proofing of banks, especially when there's non-banking financial institutions as neobanks and but are there any other benefits or sort of secondary benefits for banks who are adapting your technology or technology similar to yours?
Shall I do the first answer?
Yep.
Okay. Our technology originated in Europe.
Okay.
And labor is expensive there. So the name of our game was always digitalize every process. So what we call straight-through processing. As less human hands in that process as possible.
I see.
That was a cost driver in the beginning. At the same time, Europe is maybe famous because it's rules and regulations. There's a lot of rules to how to protect the consumer, how to act as a bank, what happens if there's fraud, or if there's anything bad happening. So that's ingrained in our system. Maybe in Southeast Asia, it's not about the cost of labor is very expensive, but maybe attrition is higher. People are maybe more often looking for another job. Then you need to retrain your staff. And in the end, we think that by digitalizing the process, the end result is way faster. So if a client applies for a loan, instead of weeks, we can bring it back to hours. And that's the answer an entrepreneur is looking for. Hey, can I have this loan? Am I okay to have this loan, and am I good for the money?
Right.
He doesn't want to wait for and file a lot of paper, and then after 4 weeks or maybe longer years, you can't do that. Because we automate the entire process, we can speed up time to yes and time to cash really fast. And at the same time, because it's the process is automated, there's less chance that someone makes a mistake, conscious or unconscious.
Right.
Let's keep it in the middle. Because it's fully automated, you can report to the regulator that you're in control and that no one kind of did something wrong.
Right.
So I think our technology, because we have that base in Europe, driven by straight to processing and regulations,
Right.
in a different setting can be a big benefit here as well.
I'm sure. Yeah, that's good to know that it's kind of the same solution works in different global contexts, and we will perhaps talk about Southeast Asian context more. But is there something that you'd like to add about the tech side of things?
Okay, sure. Maybe I don't want to name names, but if you search the internet about the new CEO Kuntu Gels or founder of new hot fintech eventually ended up in jail, right? That's important. Even maybe it wasn't you who made the mistake. It could be your employees, right? But as
Responsible.
founder,
yeah, you are responsible, right? So it is important you run the business, you grow fast, but apart from trusting human, you should trust in technology as well. Trust in people, trust in process, trust in technology. This is where we come in. We provide banking technology that you can trust, that at least on our end, we strict with regulation, we enforce this into our business logic.
I see.
And also in our AI, right? So that if there are any red flag, you as a CEO or C-level, you will know. You will be notified. Yeah, so this is important because we are 1/3 of the circle that you have to trust in order to run your business.
Makes sense. Well, that's a great point to make because
Maybe in a small addition, because we're talking about technology and software all of the time, but in essence, we are a company with people.
of course.
And people who have been working in this industry for, let's say, 40 years. So they really understand not just technology, they understand lending, they understand payments, so they have business knowledge. But at the same time, we know we are from Europe, so the technology is good. But this is a different setup in many ways. So we really understand that to be successful here, we need to open our own office here, hire local people like Jirat to really understand how things are different from what we are used to be in Europe, and then have that mix. Local knowledge, good technology, and I think we will be growing our office in Bangkok quite fast. And I think that's very important to gain trust of the local banks here, of course, that
100%.
we speak their language, we understand the culture, and we understand how the banking industry in Thailand works.
100%, and I'm glad you're doing it because there was one discussion I was having off camera here, looking at all the fascinating fintechs. But one gripe I had personally was the fact that there are not enough sort of Thai companies or companies with high footprints at my 20s. So that was something that I was discussing with friends offline. So I'm glad that you've already taken a step in that direction, having boots on the ground and sort of solving problems here locally with a local context, which especially with, I'm sure, the regulatory framework is an important step for you as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad to know that. Now, speaking of Thailand, we are here in Bangkok. So if you could perhaps shed some light on any key opportunities or challenges that you faced in your journey. Obviously, you have the benefit of the vantage point of contrasting Europe with Southeast Asia and Thailand. So are there any Thailand or Southeast Asia specific opportunities or Thailand or Southeast Asia specific challenges that you are facing?
This
You
is
want me to
more
start?
about the local market,
Yeah.
so this might be one for you.
Okay, so let's start with ASEAN market first, right? Comparing to Europe, I'm sorry, but in Europe, European Union, they are aging society, right?
It's a fact.
It's a fact. It's a fact. Yeah, which is good. They're mature, right, and they know what they are doing. But on the other hand, if we talk about Indonesia, Vietnam, the Philippines, people are young, so young market, right? And Indonesia is the largest Muslim state and the world, one of world top 20 economy, right? And that is just one country in ASEAN. So they have appetite to grow, right? And many people in Indonesia is still underserved. They have potential, but let's say if you are not on the main islands, there are like 10,000 islands in Indonesia, right? If you have just satellite, but you don't have any bank branch there, but how could you access to financial product?
Right.
So we see this as opportunity to bring our technologies, and this is for financial inclusion of people in Southeast Asia. Okay, now back to Bangkok. Thailand. Thailand, of course, this is a country of lot of potential, right? There are some financial challenges that people need to solve here, right? But we see this as opportunity. We can bring our technology in, and then at least we can help solve, of course, financial inclusion, also NPL, bad debt, risk assessment, right, and the speed of accessing to finance.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective because we talk about Southeast Asia as like a one canvas, but there's so many different
The diversity is
subcultures.
immense.
Right. So there's some opportunities and challenges, like you mentioned, the fact that financial inclusion is something that still needs to be worked upon. So that I think is common, but the cultural nuances, and I'm sure the regulation, you know it way better than I do, is it's going to vary a lot from one country to another.
Yes.
So it's I think it helps both yourself and the people you're working with that you're here on the ground, just understanding their requirements and their challenges sort of more intimately.
Yeah, I agree, and I think this is why we have an advantage, because if you think about the region that is maybe heavily regulated, maybe the most regulated region in the world, it is European Union,
Right.
right? And if we could provide a good solution to customers in Europe, so we combine, we modernize, we are agile, right? So we believe we can apply this technology anywhere in the world, right? And even though Singapore has their own regulation, regulator like MAS, Indonesia, OJK, here Bank of Thailand, right? But they have the same root, same principle.
Right.
And whatever we have done in Europe, we can apply our experience,
I
knowledge,
see.
and ready-made software here.
Interesting. That's I think a good position to be in, right? So you sort of have already jumped through a lot of the regulatory hoops already, so you can lean on that experience and that technology that you've already built. So it's good to know now. Sorry, you were saying?
I would add, we are used compliancy by default. There's no other option. So it's ingrained in every part of our system. And I think that will help face some challenges that might be here.
Right.
So for us it's the standard way of working. And maybe as an outsider, my view on what I've seen at the event and different trips in this region, I'm always amazed by all the drive of everyone to grow, to work hard together. All the ambition here, I would some of that we would have that in Europe as well. We are maybe in that sense a bit more arrivé. We've had a lot of wealth management, wealth build-up, of course, as well. But when I'm here, I'm always energized. I always think, this is how it should be. I love it.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that. I'm sure that that's a very positive message for our viewers as well, that the fact that they're here in the right place, especially when it comes to finance and the fact that there's so much room for growth. So thanks for that message. Now, I know this is kind of not a sensitive issue, but something that I'm not sure how much you can talk about. But if you can maybe, from a top level, explain some of the success stories that you've had with your customers, both on the banking side and perhaps how those benefits trickle down to the consumers. I'd love to learn about some of the wins that you've had in your journey.
Yeah. Okay. I'd love to talk about our clients, of course, but some are not maybe well known here. So I pick a few that are maybe brands that are internationally known.
Please.
So we are proud that our customer base has both huge tier 1 banks with all the demands they have on technology, on compliancy, on let's say scalability and security, but a bit slow, as you just said. And at the same time, on the same technology, we have small, fast-moving, challenging neobanks that keep us on edge. So really, really happy with both sides of that client space, but we need both to evolve.
I'm sure.
And it's a mutual beneficial relation because the smaller ones adopt new technology and are open to experimenting with AI or whatever, way more than the big banks, because there's always a lot of meetings and it takes a lot more time to do this. So we have the scalability and all the demands from the big banks that supports the smaller banks as well. They can use that, and at the same time, the smaller clients are really innovating, keep us on edge with the latest technology, and we can bring that back to the bigger banks. So I think it's a good space to be in. One client I might like to mention is ING.
Okay.
In Europe, we started in one country with a investment proposition.
I see.
ING is a large bank with in a lot of countries in Europe. And in each country they had a different system for the same product, in a way.
Okay.
We succeeded and are still in that journey to bring more countries on one system, which is way more economical. It's better to control, it's better to scale. So I think that's a good use case from the banking perspective, that we helped ING standardize on that investment platform in multiple countries, instead of having in each country a different solution and it's hard to maintain.
That's good to know, and the fact that, like you mentioned, the solutions you're working for work with all types of financial institutions, so the traditional ones who would perhaps lean more on sort of slow moving, making sure that they don't sort of diminish the trust that they've built over the years, versus the more agile, fast-moving startups who are sort of move fast and break things kind of attitude. And the fact that you're able to support both of them, because I'm sure for the industry and for the consumers, it is both of them performing at their best is the best case scenario for everybody. So I'm glad to know that. Is there any Thailand or Southeast Asia specific wins that you would like to talk about?
Okay, actually, so I would say we are still quite small here in this part of the world. We just entered this market late last year. But maybe if I could bring this back to Europe, but let me know if you have another idea. So I think we are very proud of our mortgages solution. If you talk about mortgages, you have to be with, if you are a mortgage customer, you have to be with your like home loan for 20, 30 years, right? And imagine the whole country, right? How big is this transaction and how complex the solution could be. 60% of mortgages transaction in the Netherlands is processed by our software.
Wow, that's a big number.
Yeah, so long-term, very stable and very scalable, national scale.
Very good example. We're really proud of that, of course. And maybe I can add another suggestion. A client of ours in Switzerland, an SME lending provider. We are using AI technology with them in real life, so it's in production. And let's call that module an intelligent data processing engine. So it's a bit of OCR kind of way, but it's empowered with AI. So if you want to provide a SME lending a loan, then they ask for a lot of documents. And then there's a credit analyst that's looking at the documents to, let's say, decide if someone is good to have that loan. With this document, IDP, the Intelligent Document Processor, we can just upload Excel, PDF, annual reports, whatever there is, banking statements, into the machine, and let's say a few seconds later, it's in the system, categorized. So from information, it became data in the system, and they can decide if the loan is approved. In real life, that means that the applicant of the loan, instead of weeks, it became hours to understand. Oh yeah, you can have that loan. Huge advantage for that client of ours in the market. But way more important, very important for that entrepreneur, that he knows within hours you're good for the loan.
I'm sure. Yeah, I think those are very great examples for a lot of reasons. But what I take away is that the technology works for different use cases. So this mortgages versus loan approvals, and I'm sure there's a lot of things in between as well. Different scales. So you mentioned national scale versus an SME that you mentioned. So there's it gives me a good perspective of how flexible the technology is and how many different problems it can solve within the banking and finance space. So thank you for those examples. Now, that brings us to the last question, which is what's next? So you've obviously achieved some fascinating milestones, but from what I hear, you're just getting started. So what are the next milestones you're working towards, next goals that you can share with us that we can be excited about?
Well, of course, one of the reasons we are here is that we've been discussing and meeting a lot of banks in Thailand / in this region. Yeah. So I'm really grateful to Money 2020 that you brought all those people together. I think we spoke to 30, 40 different banks, and that's a starter conversation to see if we can support them with our technology. That's an important step, of course. We are here to provide our software to new clients. At the same time, we didn't mention it before, we have an office in Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam already. We are established in Bangkok. We will open an office probably in Singapore, all for the same reasons. We believe you should have local knowledge in your company to be successful in implementing technology. So that's another important milestone, I guess, for maybe the coming months.
And I just want to add, we just did not open an office, right? For example, in Ho Chi Minh, we have an office, and then we relocated our very best engineer from Europe, and then we groom young engineers in this part of the world, upskill them, transfer knowledge, and now some of them even right competent enough to run our internal hackathon last year.
Wow, okay.
We had AI hackathon and the team in Vietnam. We had 3 winners, I think, and one of the winners was the team from Vietnam.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. So I think the next step is that apart from being here, generate business because we need to sustain our business, right? We will also contribute to local economy, hire people, and then upskill people. Yeah.
That's very positive to hear, and the fact that you're just like you mentioned, bringing talent here, so betting big on this region, and also playing the long-term game of upskilling local talent to the level that they're able to compete internationally. I think bodes well, not just for the region, but I'm sure that will help you in your journey as well. So as somebody who lives and operates in this region, I'm grateful for that. So that brings us to the end of our conversation. It has been a pleasure learning more about your work, about your backgrounds. I will follow your journey more closely moving forward. One thing I forgot to thank you for earlier is your support to the 7 Peaks Sundowner event the day before. 7 Peaks have been a good supporter of the business and startup community here, so I obviously appreciate you getting involved in that ecosystem as well. Thanks for your time, and any sort of parting words of wisdom for our audience that you would like to leave them with?
Yes, sure. So if there's any question from the audience and they want to reach out to us, please have a look at akkuro.com. We're always happy to engage in a contact. But I would like to thank you and Money 2020 for this opportunity to have this interview. And besides great software, we are from the Netherlands, and then we have great cookies.
Oh,
and
wow.
I'd like to present you stroopwafel. They're really nice, really
Thank
popular.
you very much. I really appreciate
As
this.
a token of our appreciation that you would host us on this interview.
Thank you. I'm very grateful. Thanks for your time as well. And since you're here, I hope to have way more conversations offline, and online. Do you travel to Thailand often?
Yes, and I would say because it's a treat to go here. It's one of the, I think, one of the cities I love most to travel to. Of course, we're setting up our own operation here, so more and more this will be done by the people in Bangkok. But whenever there's an opportunity to go here, I'll be the first one to say, I'm the volunteer, let me go.
I'll be following your LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. It has been a pleasure. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. If you like the content, make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.